Hello everyone, this is Observer Tribe 12, and today I have a bit of a doozy for you guys. With things like Yandere Simulator gaining a lot of popularity, it's only natural that the Yandere archetype would also be spiking in popularity. Especially since over the many years that anime has been available in the US, there have been many great animes using these types of characters, like Diabolic Lovers and Future Diaries, just to name a few. As such, of course, younger, inexperienced fans are going to latch onto these archetypes and try to roll with them in their own characters. But there are some places that an anime archetype really doesn't belong. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we can begin properly, I feel it would be necessary to first define what a yandere is. According to the Anamanga Wiki, a yandere is a Japanese term for a person who is initially very loving and gentle to someone, or at least innocent, before their devotion becomes destructive in nature, often through violence and/or brutality. Yandere characters are mentally unstable, and sometimes are incredibly deranged and not mentally sane, often using extreme violence and/or brutality as an outlet for their emotions. I feel this is a good generalization of the character type to get across what I'm trying to explain here. So let's talk about this. Yanderes are often shown to use these brutal tactics, often in pursuit of somebody they hold an obsessive or an unhealthy affection for, in order to force their unwilling partner to love them, or to scare off any possible competition for the relationship that they believe they have. In anime, this works, since the plot of the stories often involving these types of characters usually revolves around that premise, giving the character a chance to really showcase those traits about them, as well as the slow descent in madness. However, that doesn't mean this archetype works everywhere, especially when a young or inexperienced fan gets their hands on this archetype and tries to force it where it doesn't belong. Now, I'm not saying all yandere OCs are bad. If you have a good premise behind the work you're creating and give the character plenty of time to develop and showcase their motivations, you could probably have a very good yandere character. However, if you're making an OC to add to an existing world, a yandere personality type probably isn't the best one to use. But I'm not going to be talking about the ones made for anime purposes today. As the title of this video suggests, I'm talking about creepypasta OCs that have decided to use the anime archetype yandere for their character. I'm going to be very blunt about this and just say I don't think the creepypasta community is a place for anime archetypes. If you can only draw in the anime style and want to draw your OC, that's one thing. But once you cross into anime territory by giving them anime-colored hair, unusual anime eye colors, anime-esque powers, or anime personality types, then you've crossed a line to a place where anime ideas simply shouldn't belong. Now, I'll say this now, creepypasta is not anime. Creepypasta is not fantasy. Creepypasta are meant to be scary stories you could tell around the campfire to creep out your friends, only available to everyone because they are on the internet. However, young or inexperienced fans have taken that idea and raked it through the mud by making OCs that are very kawaii desu, cute but psycho sort of products that probably belong more in an anime than a creepypasta. However, I'm only going to cover the ones that use yandere archetypes, and they certainly use them poorly. As you sift through most creepypasta OCs, you start to notice quite a few trends. But the one that I'm looking at is the trends used by the ones taking advantage of the yandere archetype. For starters, you'll notice a lot of them are shipped with other pastas. Now, keep in mind there are no canon characters in the creepypasta community, as all of the stories on creepypasta are all user-submitted. However, there are classic pastas, which are the ones people latched onto the most and became the most popular, spiking creepypasta's popularity. You'll notice in most of these yandere pasta OCs are shipped with one or more classic pasta, and are usually ridiculous to ages, most of them being between 10 and 18. So really, not even a decent age for a character to be going insane. There are a few exceptions to that, like the ghost child Sally, but those exceptions are few and far between, and these teenage slashers are overdone. Though that's a video for another time. If you guys want to hear my thoughts about that, let me know. But back to the yanderes. Another thing you'll notice is that most yandere character types have it said in their bio that they're a yandere. If you read their shitty stories, it's never mentioned though. There's nothing in their stories that would support they're a yandere, and apparently they're just yanderes because the creators say so. It doesn't work like that. For a yandere type to work, their obsessive feelings would have to be their prime motivations, and that doesn't fit with the slasher character you're trying to create. Can you imagine if a slasher like Freddy Krueger's primary motivation was to make the pedophile across the street notice him? That wouldn't make him very scary, now would it? As far as I can tell, the yandere personality type is only put in there so that they have an excuse to make their character possessive over a classic pasta that they've shifted their character with. But doing that, they've taken an established personality type and turned it into a personality trait, which could easily be replaced with something like protective over loved ones. However, you can see with most of these how that wouldn't work, since a lot of these stories involve these teen slashers killing their parents or loved one in the Jeff the Killer formula. But again, that's a video for another day. Now, there are ways to rectify the problem with this, but I really only recommend trying this if you have an experienced peer editor or are a strong writer. The first being, don't make is a yandere a character trait. A yandere is a personality type and should be used accordingly if you absolutely must have a character like this. Make sure the story leaves enough time to show the audience that innocence or sweetness that comes before the descent to madness. Make sure the change isn't an overnight phenomenon. A descent to insanity is just that, a slow descent, not a switch that can be flipped on and off. And if you're having trouble thinking of things that would get your character to that point, research is your best bet. Another thing to remember is that your character is still human. So just because they're a yandere doesn't mean they can't die or have inhuman abilities like super strength or won't die if they receive a fatal wound, but I'll go into these in another video in much more detail. Another thing is showcase the cause of their obsession. Make me believe that they're obsessed with this person and would do everything in their power to possess this person. Not love, possess. As yanderes obsess over people, not love them. Definitely a common misunderstanding that I've seen. Also, if you do make your character young, like between 10 to 15, I wouldn't use it at all, as those ages are a bit of a stretch for this personality type, and really just make your OC look like they're just doing things for attention. 16 to 17 can be iffy, but a little more acceptable, but I would really find this sort of obsession more acceptable in a character that is 18 plus, because they've had more time to be in relationships and experience things that would put them on that track to possibly obsessing over someone, or finding a person they think brings them stability and obsessing over them, as everything else in their lives has put them on the track to that descent to madness. Also, a huge thing that I would avoid is having a yandere character obsess over a classic pasta, as it ruins the immersion that your character's story would be telling and just makes it look like another X-Heart Jeff the Killer story that's in the just another fanfiction category on Creepypasta. The last thing I would keep in mind for a yandere character, if you absolutely must use it, is to consider the different types of yanderes and which one your character would fall into. Like, are they the caring, manipulative kind? The sadistic, abusive kind? Do they end up killing their lover and keeping the corpse as a trophy? Or do they kidnap them and tie them up in the basement of an abandoned building or something? While obsession is a strong trait in a yandere, it's not the only thing to consider, as what they do with their obsessions can vary greatly and is what makes such characters so interesting in the first place. So those are my thoughts about yanderes and creepypasta, but what are yours? Is there something I missed? Something you disagree with? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time on Hey Can We Talk?
So